Good afternoon, everyone. We are excited to have you here for the CAPIT workshop, Navigating the Apprenticeship Models and Program Design. Just a little housekeeping items before we get started. All of the attendees are currently in listen-only mode. If you would like to participate and ask questions, just raise your hand and we'll be able to unmute you. And if you have any questions, you can post those in the question box and we will address those questions as we go. We are excited today because we have some guest speakers here with us. Andrea Messing-Mathy from JFF is with us, and Mamadou Ninjai is with us from JFF, and they're going to be presenting, and then we'll get into the details of that wonderful exploration tool that we gave you and kind of open the floor up after that. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Andrea.
Hi, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well and is safe at home. Looks like we're going to be at home for a while longer, so we can all commiserate about that. So today in our workshop, we're going to be talking about how we navigate the apprenticeship model and program design. And with me, I have Mamadou Ninjai from our Back on Track team at JFF. I've had the pleasure of working with Mamadou in various projects at JFF, and I think he brings over 15 years of experience in thinking through program design, particularly for the opportunity youth population. And I think that he'll bring a lot of great insights to our conversation. I will say, even though we have you muted, just for right now, this is, I'm hoping this is going to be a really open and robust conversation. And as we get towards our open discussion, we'll unmute all of you and we can either continue to navigate through chat, or I hope that folks will feel comfortable sharing information about both this presentation, but also about your insights on the assessment tool. So this is very much a participatory webinar slash workshop slash commiseration session. So please be prepared, write down questions as they come up, have your assessment tool at the ready so that we can have a really robust discussion. So just to set the stage, our agenda here, again, reorientation to CAP-IT model, an assessment tool, focus on program models and program design, and then again, an open discussion on your program models and how you're answering questions in the assessment tool. Why we focus on program design? This is something that is I actually have this statement on my wall: how we design dictates how we work, right? So a system produces what it's designed to produce. So we're hoping in this time that we can spend time talking about how we cohesively design programs so that they best serve the audiences we're trying to serve, and so that they also capture all of what the CAP-IT model is trying to do. So one of the questions that the assessment tool really set out was, how does your program capture the elements in the CAP-IT model? So where does it fit essential employability skills? How are basic skills or incumbent worker training? How are all of those pieces kind of feathered into the program model as you've designed it? And if they're not feathered in, what supports do you need them to be feathered in for you? Or how are you thinking about how you might grow this going forward? So just to reorient again around principles for CAP-IT, the CAP-IT really envisions that the inclusion of programs which span across the bridge to apprenticeship spectrum with clearly designed and implemented connections into, across, and beyond that structure. It also envisions that populations are served that will enter into a pathway based on their own educational needs and will be supported to transition onto further education or into employment. It also envisions that essential employability skills are embedded in the curriculum and training throughout a program, and that credential and degree attainment will increase as a participant progresses through a program or series of connected programs. So just to always kind of keep that front and center as we're designing, as we're thinking about our design, that these are the core principles that will guide our work. This CAP-IT model is what was part of your assessment tool, and this is how we're envisioning then the four pieces of of the puzzle that you're creating. First around ecosystem, second around project design, third around program and course design, and then fourth around continuous improvement. So how are you assessing where you're going and where you've been? So today our conversation will be far more around kind of project and program design, but as we move into open discussion, I think also keep in mind that questions around ecosystem and continuous improvement are also incredibly valuable. So on that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Mamadou and give him a chance to introduce himself, and then also to talk through some of these slides and some of the work that he's done with organizations on both program and project design and what impact that's had. Mamadou, can I pass it to you?
Sure, thank you. And Andrew, are you going to move the slides for me? Is that right?
I sure will.
That on my...
I will.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you all. I'm happy to be sharing what I know about this work, and also I'm looking forward to learning from you. So as was said before, my name is Mamadou Njai. I'm a program director at JFF. My work primarily focuses on designing pathways to economic self-sufficiency, targeting generally young adults who are not in school or in some ways not in school or not working. And so for the past 10 years, I would say, actually, I've been focused on designing programs that re-engages those young adults and helps them get on a path to economic self-sufficiency through post-secondary education and or post-secondary training. So more either the college sort of route, more the traditional academic route, or more focused post-secondary training. And that's why we came up with the model that I'm going to talk through but in a few minutes, called Career Next. And I wanted to sort of share this, and to actually, before sharing it, just let you know that this is a framework that we use in our work, and it's designed to be highly flexible and customizable as well. You see that we have a set of phases, and these phases are, in a way, they are sequential. So you're supposed to do phase 1 and then phase 2 and then phase 3. But it's also important to know that there's a lot of overlap in these phases. So you could be doing phase 1 and phase 2, or phase 2 and phase 3, etc. You know, the work that we work with partners such as community-based organizations, community colleges, post-secondary training providers, employers, and depending on the context in which they work, depending on the local economy, depending on the populations that they serve, we work with them to come up with solutions that meet their needs, right? So it's not designed to be kind of a one-size-fits-all, but rather just a framework to guide ultimately what you all choose to do on the ground. So, and I'll talk a little bit about each phase. So basically, the reason why we came up with this was because we were hearing, this is right after the recession, the Great Recession of 2008. You know, a lot since then, that a lot of young people wanted to work. You know, a lot of them want to go to school and go to you know, get an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, but a lot of them wanted to work, and a lot of them wanted to find ways to relatively get a, you know, to get a relatively quick a credential and get a first job that had potential for advancement, right? And so I have spent a lot of time looking at these types of programs and looking at the labor market, looking at the program designs, and looking at sectors as well. And so when you look at the Career Next model, I would say that it applies overall to a wide range of sectors, manufacturing and IT and healthcare. But my work in the last couple of years, especially, has been largely focused on IT as a sector. And so if you're thinking about, you know, the phases, again, the way we've set it up is that we had in mind delivery partners, like who are the partners that are coming together to deliver Career Next. And the partners include community-based organizations, community colleges, and training providers and employers. And so in thinking about phase one is basically what we call the on-ramps, and it may be called differently in your context. You know, some programs talk about a bridge, you know, but the idea is that this is where you are thinking about in outreach and recruitment. So who are your target student population? How are you going to find them? How are you going to recruit them? What does the intake process look like? How are you going to assess them to make sure that they are a good fit into the program, in the technical training program that you have in place? So all of those are questions that we help programs answer, and that we design resources and tools to help programs address all those areas. In my experience, the way phase one is implemented is a partnership between a community-based organization and a training provider. For example, a community college, right? Because the community-based organizations generally have access to populations, so they're very, very close to the target population. In our case, young people, so they know where to find them, they know how to reach out to them, and they know how to engage them. And so the community-based organization can partner with a community college to make sure that the young people are available, right? And that the young people want to go to school, right? And they want to go into a career. And all of the sort of that pre-work is done by the community-based organization. And then the community-based organization sends the young people to the community college for the actual technical training program. And some of the things, I would just tell you quickly, some of the things that are covered as part of the on-ramps include basically, you know, career exploration, for example. So before you send young people to an IT training program, for example, do they know what IT is? Like, do they know what types of jobs are available in the IT sector? Do they know about, you know, the types of salaries that you can make in an IT? Do they know about the various branches of IT, you know, from hardware to software, programming, big data, and so on and so forth? So all of those are activities that you can do during the on-ramps phase to ensure that young people have an idea about what they're getting themselves into. And I think that's a really solid foundation for them to have before they enter an IT training program. Another thing that's covered during the on-ramps phase is basic skills training, like, for example, reading, writing, and math. And as most of us know, and this is really unfortunate, but it's a reality that we deal with most of the time, you know, graduating from high school, even in the United States, in many cases, does not mean that you can read and write at grade level, right? And so a lot of programs during the on-ramps phase are helping young people kind of, you know, catch up in reading and writing and math, especially, just to be able to read at grade level and to be able to handle the basic communication needs in the workplace, right? And then another area I would say that's covered during the on-ramps phase is a high level of customized supports. We all know that young people especially need a lot of social, emotional, what we call wraparound supports. So making sure that housing is taken care of, transportation is taken care of. They, you know, if there's tuition involved, they know how to apply for financial aid if it's offered, that the basics are covered before they enroll in an education, in a training program, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to focus on school. So that's roughly what the on-ramps phase entails. And then, and again, it's important to keep in mind that this is something that if your college can do it, I think you should go ahead and do, right? But in my experience, there's a lot of opportunities here for colleges to partner with community-based organizations during the on-ramps phase. So then I'll move on to phase two, which is the employer-driven training program. The idea here is that the training program that you are offering will lead to entry-level employment, right? Entry-level employment that has potential for advancement. And so since you all are doing IT, and pre-COVID-19, IT was a very hot sector in a lot of areas of the country. My sense is that probably will remain, that IT is going to continue to be a growth sector in the United States. But in the training program is where you are helping young people get that IT credential that they're going to need to get that first job. The credential could be A+ certification, it could be Network Plus certification, it could be the Google IT certification, which actually I spent a lot of time working on the Google IT certification across the United States. But the idea is that this is where young people are getting those critical technical skills and employability skills to be able to get a job right after they finish the training program with you. And some of the things covered in the training program include, making sure that young people gain the skills that they need to succeed. We talk a lot about employability skills, communication, teamwork, those essential workplace success skills, being able to give feedback, to take feedback, to show up on time, and so on and so forth. These are covered during the training phase, as well as the more technical ones. And again, depending on the target credential. In my experience, especially working in the Google IT certificate, I see a lot of programs stack credentials, and by that I mean, you can start with A+, for example, and then move on to the Google IT cert, or you can do both at the same time. I see programs that have actually found ways to align the Google IT cert and the A+ certification and Network Plus into one curriculum, which I think is fantastic if you can do it. And the idea is that young people will get sort of cross-cutting skills, because a lot of these certificates cover, have significant overlap, right? And they can get all three, or they can get two, which ultimately makes them a really attractive candidate in the job market as well. The training phase is also an opportunity to help young people get some kind of on-the-job experience, because as you all know this very well, that employers prefer candidates with on-the-job experience, right? And so I have seen a lot of programs partner with employers to offer internships, some kind of work-based learning opportunity, just so that the training isn't all about theory, right? So that young people, while they're doing the training, they also have an opportunity to get some type of on-the-job experience, which will benefit them when they apply for jobs later on. And then I'll touch on the third phase, the employer, the career track employment phase. I have to say that this is the most difficult phase, and I think this is where we need the most work done. I think there's a lot of aspiration around this. Like, a lot of providers that I talk to want to be able to offer their candidates supports even after they finish the training, but it's really, really hard to do, because you need resources to do it. You need really tight partnerships with employers to do it well. And a lot of programs just are not there yet, right? And so, but there are lots of best practices in this area, especially in programs that target young people. And I think programs that target older adults as well. There are lots of promising practice around supporting entry-level employees, right? From setting up mentoring programs to match entry-level employees with more experienced employees. offering benefits. I think benefits is a really critical tool that employers have in their toolbox to help with retention and engagement of entry-level employees. There's also a lot of sort of affinity groups that employers create, right, to help young people make connections, in the company with individuals who may share the same background or have gone to the same school or from the same neighborhood, to share ideas and offer opportunities for mentoring and additional supports. And I think, I don't think that this is like a job for employees to do. I think that training providers, including community colleges and community-based organizations, can contribute to helping employers in these retention efforts, right? So that they don't lose them. We know, or we are familiar with lots of studies that say that employers spend a lot of money on training and onboarding, and it's a huge cost for them. So they really want to hold on to the ones that they hire, to make sure that they stay involved and stay engaged in the company. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the framework is designed to do. And again, you don't feel like you have to do one phase versus the other. I feel like this is intended for you to look at and review and think about in the context of your own programming, and in the context of your various pain points, right? So, are you having trouble recruiting? Is that where most of your pain points are? Is it about retention of students? Is it about assessing for skills? Is it about forming partnerships with employers? Is it about, young people or your student population not being engaged enough? Is it about the types of supports that you offer them? Can you be creative in how you structure those supports? Those are all questions that I think this framework, to a certain extent, can help you think about and can, provide some potential answers, right? And I say that understanding that, there's no silver bullet, right? And that it's only through sort of learning from these various experiences that we can improve our own practice. And I wanted to switch to just to share with you a little bit about what this looks like in the on the ground. Examples of specific organizations that we work with, and I wanted to highlight the Door, which is a multi-service organization in New York City that primarily serves vulnerable young people who are homeless or who are experiencing the foster care system. And what I was describing earlier, this is kind of the Door's translation of the Korea Next framework, right? And you'll see that the Door has these various components of the program model, from outreach, recruitment, from on the left, all the way to internship opportunities on the right. And the Door, in this case, works with a training provider called Per Scholars that you may know about. It's a national IT training provider, and this program is called Tech Bridge. And essentially, the Door realized that their student population, young people who are homeless and are transitioning from the foster care system, cannot directly go to Per Scholars and make it through the admission process. It's just not going to work, because they face just too many barriers to be successful in the admission process at Per Scholars. So the Door set up this Tech Bridge program, in which in the first few weeks, they do a lot of what I was talking about in the on-ramps phase, right? They help young people get oriented, right? They help young people meet with a career counselor. They tell them about IT, how exciting it is, how many opportunities there are for growth, how much money you can make, and so on and so forth. They help them with reading, writing, and math. They help them with their mental health and housing and those types of needs. And then they send them over to Perscholas, and Perscholas does the 15-week IT support training, which is one option, or they could do the CompTIA certifications, A+ or network certification. So this is an example of how one program, The Door, has implemented the Career Next framework, specifically targeting young adults who are homeless and transitioning from the foster care system in New York City. The other one I wanted to touch on quickly is the second example is a program called JEVS in Philadelphia, and JEVS in Philadelphia, as you can see on the slide, takes a kind of a similar approach in that the program is divided into various phases, right? There's a sort of an IT readiness component, which is the first phase, and then there is a pre-apprenticeship IT program, which is the actual technical training phase, and then there is the on-the-job experience, on-the-ground experience, and which is a AmeriCorps Scholars program that they have, sending young people to public schools and other sort of public institutions to work as tech support in the community, right? And they get paid, and they also get work experience, which is fantastic. And young people just love the experience of being out in the community and helping other people, while at the same time learning more about IT and about customer service, especially. So that's JEVS in Philadelphia. Again, their implementation, their version of what the Career Next model looks like. And then the final example I'm sharing here is a Treehouse talent path model. And Treehouse is a sort of an online sort of a boot camp program. And it's a sort of a pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship model. And as you see on the screen, their recruitment phase is 1 to 2 months, right? So they spend a considerable amount of time partnering with community-based organizations to identify candidates for their pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. And the idea, I mean, what I like about this approach is that you don't if you let each partner do what they're good at, right? So you may be a community college, or you may be a training provider. You don't know young people, or you don't know how to find them. Why spend time doing that, right? Why don't you just go to someone who already knows who already knows how to do that, and let them do it, and then work with you to funnel young people, or to funnel candidates to you. And then you do what you do best, right? Maybe it's the technical training is what you do best, right? And so you can provide the technical training in partnership with the CBO, actually, because by the time young people get to you, by the time your candidates get to you, the community-based organization may know a whole lot about them, and you can use that information to help you tailor your programming for your candidates. And then for Treehouse, it switches to an apprenticeship model for 3 months, in which they do more the programming side, the software side of things, and they target a kind of a 40-hour work week, and using the MIT living wage, the hourly living wage, which you can look up in your own area. And so that's their goal, right? And they have a really tight partnership with employees in doing this. And then after that, they're the few programs that I know of, right, that continue to provide career support beyond training. And it's a 2-year time frame, which is long, but in my mind, I think it's also needed, just to make sure that young people and students not only get on track, but stay on track, right? And that means you're providing a wide range of supports from mentoring to you know, sort of benefits management to advising and counseling and reskilling, all the types of supports that they will need to stay employed in a really fast moving and fast evolving field. So that's the sort of a third version of how Career Next is implemented in the field at Treehouse, especially using a more formal pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship model. So so I've said a lot in a few minutes, but I'm happy to elaborate. I'm happy to answer questions. You know, I'm happy to connect with anyone later to share more in terms of resources I have. I actually included a list of resources on the next slide on just sample IT career maps. I love these because, you know, they are kind of visual representations of IT careers, right? And they can be really powerful when having conversations with your clients on what opportunities exist in the IT field, right? You know, and you can find these online. Like I've shared with you just a few here to give you an idea of the various sort of pathways, you know, whether you're going into hardware and software or both. But I think that these can be really helpful tools in talking with your clients about what IT is, how you can go from A to Z, and what's in the middle, what types of salaries you can make, what training options exist, how much time you're going to have to commit to, you know, in order to finish this, and so on and so forth. And that can be a great motivator for people who are interested in IT careers. And last,
Hey,
yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering if there's one that might be helpful for us to click. I'm happy to click on one just to show our attendees kind of what these look like and how these might be helpful. Is there one that you might want me to click on over others?
Yeah, actually any one of them. You can just click on anyone. Yeah, and
I'll just,
and some of them,
I'll
like,
go to Oregon. Let's see if this works.
yeah.
Yes, here we go.
Yeah, and I think that's a good one because it's a community college based model, and I think that part of it is, you know, as I was saying earlier, to show young people or your clients or older adults as well the range of options that are available and what path they can take in order to get there, and you know, you can use them as part of a career awareness or career development activity or career exploration activity. And there are, you know, if you go to, I think the other one is Career One Stop, which I think you all know about. If you want a more interactive, dynamic, you know, you can even go into, you know, on the Career One Stop website, for example, there are videos that you can look at. Like if someone, you know, said, all right, I want to go into, you know, cybersecurity, you know, you could go onto a Career One Stop on the Career One Stop website and look up cybersecurity and actually see examples of things that, you know, cybersecurity folks do on a daily basis. What's a day like for someone who's working in cybersecurity? What are the things they spend their time on? What are, you know, and you can, they have people that who on video, like people who work in the field on video, who can answer questions and who can give your candidates a much better sense of what it's like and what it takes to be successful in that particular field. Yeah. Oh, and then
That's
Andrea,
really helpful.
yeah, and I was just gonna say that I want to just reiterate the importance of sort of partnering with employers as well in this, right? It isn't just a CBO training provider, community college thing. I think it's also kind of engaging, the demand side as well, because I have seen employers really step up and contribute significantly to the development of the program through, for example, reviewing curriculum, interviewing candidates, doing mock interviews online or in person, giving sort of a preference to interview your candidates when they finish, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm sure you all know this, but I just wanted to reiterate that this is great. The whole framework is premised on a tight partnership between CBOs, community colleges, training providers in general, and employers as well.
So that is incredibly helpful, and it's given us a fair amount to chew on. So I'd like to just open this up, and I'm a dog person, so I always find an opportunity to put a picture of a dog in every PowerPoint presentation I possibly can. How is this information kind of connecting to questions you might have about your own program design? I'd love to see if we could open this up to the broader audience. And Amy, if you don't mind unmuting folks, that would be great.
Absolutely. Bernie, you have your hand up, so I'm going to unmute you now and allow you to share with us.
Yes, I'd
Bernie,
like
you're
to
good to
know,
go.
Bernie Pepino from Kishwaukee College. I'd like to know, on the apprenticeship, I know she had 2 years. Is that from the beginning of the first educational class they take at the junior college or community college until they're done at the employer, or is that just the 2 years they're basically on the job training with the employer?
Yeah, good question. It is 2 years that they are on the job with the employer. And I have to say, I guess one thing that I also wanted to say is that Treehouse is unlike the other ones I shared, unlike the door and Jobs, it's not free. So Treehouse is you actually have to pay to sign up, right? Which I think makes a significant difference in terms of the population that it attracts, but also the fact that so our target populations, this may be a good option for them if they're able to pay and if they know what they're getting into, and most importantly, if they will have the resources to pay for it either before or when they finish the program.
Okay, because that's one of I won't say first questions, but during the first conversation with a potential employer I ran into, they want to know, where they are with the timeline, if it has to be associated with a Department of Labor apprenticeship, or it could be, structured like a DOL apprenticeship, but not going through the official registration. So that's why I was asking. Now, do you know of anybody that has a DOL apprenticeship, approved apprenticeship for an IT program such as that would only be 2 years?
I not off the top of my head. I can look into it for sure. I think that this was actually the subject of a research project that we did recently at JFF to try to identify, and our target actually was pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship programs, like registered pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship programs that were in IT, and we came up with a list which actually I can share with you. So I guess as a follow-up to this, I can share the list of programs that we identified that have a DOL registered apprenticeship model focusing on IT.
I'd appreciate that, because that's the other thing they want to know is basically how should they be breaking down the core competencies in relative time that the employer, the apprentice, should normally get, masters that skill. It's like a tool and die maker. Some get done early, some get done late, and the vast majority of them fit into that, let's say, 650 hours. Okay. So I'm looking for something like that, because that's what they're asking for, because they're looking they're receptive to a structured program, but they don't know what it's supposed to look like, and they have no idea how to make one, obviously. And that's, I think, something that we should be providing.
Yep.
Your help would be appreciated there.
Absolutely. Happy to follow up and share that list with you.
Thank you. You know how to get a hold of me, don't you?
Yeah,
I think through Andrea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take care of that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
That everyone will be interested in, so that'll be part of our follow-up.
Yep. Great.
Thank you, Bernie. I'm going to put your hand down there, and then anyone else have a question? Please go ahead and raise your hand or post those questions in the question box, and we will address those. Bernie, I'm going to guess you have another question, so I'm going to unmute you.
No, I don't. I can't get out of there.
Oh, I'll put your hand down. There you go.
So, Mamadou, I actually do have a question, and I'm wondering if we can go back to the door, because one of the things I think that I consistently wonder about is how students get into these programs. Like, kind of what's the role of the community college as an intermediary? Who plays the role for outreach and recruitment? How do we make sure that students are prepared for the rigorous work? And I'm just curious if you can speak a little bit to kind of how they use assessment tools or how they use coaching to make sure that students kind of come into the door ready to go.
Yeah, so students who show up at the door, as I said earlier, are among the most vulnerable segments of young people. Most of them homeless and from the foster care system or involved with the juvenile justice system. And so they're not ready, right, when they show up at the door. And actually, in most of the time when they show up at the door, it's to get other types of services, right? Mostly support services. The door happens to have a wide range of educational and training options that they share with young people. So first and foremost for the door is kind of a stabilization work that they do, and then after that, sort of career / education exploration. And so as part of that is when they start to do career exploration assessments, talking to young people about where they are in their educational journey, whether they have high school credential or not. Some do, others don't. If they don't, there's an in-house GED or HiSET in the program that the young people are referred to while they are taking the HiSET. At the same time, they are talking about their career interests. They're working with their coach / navigator, and in terms of what the sort of the continuum. Then if someone say is interested in IT, then the process gets started. So basically, oh yeah, you're interested in IT. Well, let's look into getting you at Scholars. If you go to Scholars, you can get X, Y, and Z in just about 15 weeks. You can do training X, Y, Z. You can be working as a TA support person, et cetera, et cetera. And then, what does it take to get there? You have to have a high school credential. So we need to check that box, right? If you do, then let's think about all the other assessments, screening tools that Scholars have. And the truth is, if you go to Scholars on your own, they're gonna give you the tape, all right, and they require that you read and write at 9th grade level. That's minimum entrance requirement. You can go on your own. If you go on your own, you may get in, but chances are, for many young people, they're not, right? And so what can we do to get your tape level high enough so that that's not going to be an obstacle for you? So then let's in addition to career exploration and the tape, let's look at how will we actually get you there. The door happens to be in Lower Manhattan, and Scholars is all the way in the Bronx, right? And so we have to make sure that you have transportation to get there, reliable transportation, get up every day, that you have a way to get there, because it's a rigorous, intensive program, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? So let's look into getting you reliable transportation. So it's a lot of coaching, sort of hand holding, help and assistance, academically, socially, emotionally, to get them ready for the rigor of this IT training program, which if they complete, at least in a pre-COVID-19 world, they had a really strong chance of getting employment, starting, making a living wage.
Amadou, I think we might have lost you there.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I had no interruption.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that if it's a lot of hand-holding, a lot of help, a lot of work with young people to help get them through a training program, which if they complete, they have a really strong chance to get a job paying a living wage capacity.
There you are. Hi there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, go ahead, Amy.
We do have a question. Cindy Drew from Prairie State College says that her pain point is employer commitment. Could you please share a list of employers in their region that they can reach out to regarding IT apprenticeship opportunities?
Mm-hmm. So, great question. Thank you. So I can talk a little bit. I can talk about actually employers in various initiatives that I'm involved in, starting with the Google IT Cert, for example. So the Google IT Cert has a group, has what they call it, the Employer Consortium, right? And the idea of the Employee Consortium is that Google is sort of getting IT employers to sign up to be part of the consortium. And when you join the consortium, you're not making a commitment to hire, because I think that's possible, but it's hard to get. But you at least, as an employer, would give preference to Google IT certificate completers, and when you are interviewing, for example, right? You review their resumes, you'll interview them. So you're making a commitment to interview, or you make a commitment to give certificate completers some type of job experience, internship, externship, et cetera, right? So I can share the link actually with the Google IT Certificate Consortium. I think that another follow-up thing I can do, and it's growing, right? It's a relatively small group for now, but Google is committed to growing the list of employers who are part of the consortium, and they are also interested in feedback from providers like yourselves. For example, if you know of an employer or you're working with an employer who is interested in joining the consortium, Google would love to hear from you, right? I think that, I hear your pain point that you want a commitment, you want a firm commitment. I think we are, some employers individually or maybe as part of a collective do it. But I think that it's not that we have work to do in that area. And I personally understand why employers would be hesitant to commit to hiring, because as we've just found out, the economic, conditions can change just like that, right? And plans can change, and hiring plans especially can change. The economy has changed a lot just in a matter of a few weeks. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of employers are hesitant to make those types of commitments. Apart from Google, I have seen regionally, like some of the big name employers, for example, Comcast and Verizon in particular, in the IT support world. So a lot of the programs I work with, for example, Per Scholars actually is one of those programs that has a strong relationship with Comcast and Verizon, who recruit from the pool of Per Scholars graduates for their entry-level technicians. Insurance companies, Liberty Mutual, for example, State Street, like banks, and Bank of America are employers that I hear, whose names I hear consistently in our work as employers who make a commitment for either internships, apprenticeships, or some type of work experience working with training providers. So I think there's a strategy here to engage local employers. I think there should be a different strategy for local employers and for national employers, right? And so I'm happy to share the list from Google and maybe suggest a few other names that may have presence in your community. But I would say that it's a sort of a long-term game, right? To get employers to commit to working with you, to commit to interviewing your completers, and ultimately to commit to hiring from your pool of completers. I think it's a long-term proposition, and that having a strategy for both the local and the national would be helpful.
Excellent. That's great. We did have a couple questions of who to talk to at Google. So I understand by your comments, you'll send us some contacts so we can share that out with this group as to where to start when contacting Google. Is that correct? Great.
Absolutely. And then can I just ask quickly, so is it,
Yeah.
are some or most of people on the phone implementing the Google IT Cert?
I would say some, not all.
Not all.
Okay, I see. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's helpful. So I'm happy to follow up to share anything Google related around the employee consortium and the contacts, the people to contact there for the employee consortium.
I'm wondering if you can speak just for a moment, and I know you do have to go, so I'm cautious about not taking too much of your time. If you can speak for a moment about kind of the career pathways for the Google IT certification, and I'm wondering if there's somewhere on this list that you provided of resources, if there's something evident here,
Mm-hmm.
just so we can kind of see what the trajectory would be for someone who does get the Google IT cert.
Yeah, so the Google IT Cert, as you all, I mean, some of you may know, that it's relatively new, right? I think it's been around for a couple of years. So, and frankly, there is still some hesitation on the part of employers because a lot of them don't know what the Google IT Cert is. They don't know what it means. And so there isn't a whole lot of sort of history behind the credential, in that, however, I think that there is enough overlap between all these entry-level credentials, the Google IT Cert, the CompTIA 1, the CompTIA A+, CompTIA Network Plus. There's enough overlap that you can start with the Google IT Cert, or you can start with CompTIA with A+, and build from there, right? So you can go from Google IT Cert to CompTIA A+, to Network Plus, to Cisco, and so on and so forth. You can also start with A+, right? So I think that we are still learning in our work at JFF. We're still learning about ways that colleges and training providers are doing this, because they are finding that, completers with the Google IT Cert only sometimes have trouble getting a job for the reason I said earlier, because employers don't know what the Google IT Cert is, right? So they are figuring out how to stack the Google IT Cert with other types of credentials so that completers are much more attractive to employers, right? And you also may know of this second Google IT credential, the Google Automation with Python, which is very new. Google announced this like a couple of months ago. And this is intended to do exactly that. This is intended to build on the IT certificate and offer a path to more software work for completers who are interested and who have the aptitude to do it. So all of that to say, so we are. I don't think that we have a kind of a firm sort of grasp of, at least based on work on the ground, what the Google IT Cert, what it leads to. I think there are options, and I'm happy to talk through those with you and share with you what others are doing. But I think you have the opportunity to align the Google IT Cert with other credentials and help your students navigate, that world of, credentialing, starting from, these entry-level certifications.
Sounds good. Are there any other last questions before we sign off from Mamadou? And Amy, I'm not sure if you're monitoring the chat. For some reason, I'm not able to see all of the audience members.
It's in the question, and really the questions we have all been addressed. There was a point of that we do have programs using geofencing and Facebook for outreach purposes to try to be sure that we're regionalizing those marketing efforts. But I think that's all the questions now. Let me double check if anyone has their hand up. Oh, Bobby has her hand up. So Bobby, I'm going to unmute you and you get the last question. You're unmuted, Bobby.
I didn't have a question. I put my hand up when they were asking about Google IT. We have implemented it, and I don't know if we know that, but Parkland is the downstate lead on the Google IT for Illinois. And what we did, everybody has done something different because each college chose what they wanted to do. But we ended up creating a certificate out of Google IT. And the only thing we did is we added a hands-on lab for those students who really needed to, get in and touch it and feel it. And it's all online except for the lab, which is once a week. And then when they complete it, in addition to the Google IT certificate, they get a certificate from Parkland College. And it has been included in our networking AAS. So it's the first course that you take to sort of give you the overview of what this thing is all about.
Okay. Great. And Andrea, I'm gonna have to sign off.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mamadou. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Happy Wednesday.
Bye.
Thank you.
Just to get to that.
Orange is the color.
Just to get to the to that question around, or the comment around kind of the certificate from Parkland College included in the networking in that AAS. I think that's a great example of how and I'm just gonna do a PowerPoint no. I'm gonna toggle here of how these things are connected to each other, right? So stacking and making sure that as a student completes one thing, it opens up doors for other things. I think that's an incredibly important part of this, an important part of the program design that I think I'm hoping that we can spend some time talking about or answering questions about. Are there any last questions about what Mamadou shared that I might be able to help field? Any follow-up information that you'd like to see or hear about? So if there are any, just pop them in the chat box. Again, I'm having some trouble with the chat box. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's okay. I think at this point now, I wanted to have an open discussion on the assessment tool. So I'm not sure, Amy, if it's worth it to unmute folks at this point, or if it's worth it for folks to raise their hand. I think what we're hoping to get out of this next half hour, and this is very much an open discussion, is as you're doing the assessment tool, and I have a link to it, we can click into it if we need to, as you're working on the assessment tool, what questions are emerging for you? Are there innovations that you are interested in sharing at this point? what are some things that are kind of coming out of going through this process of the assessment tool that you might want to share?
So let's handle it this way. We've already got a hand up, so we're going to start with those who volunteer. And since we do have 25 minutes, understand that everyone's going to give a little report out. So Bernie, your hand's up. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. I'm concerned if we unmute everybody, we'll have dogs and kids and everything taking part today. So Bernie, go ahead and tell us how everything's going with you and what your questions are as you have worked with the assessment tool.
Moving through the assessment tool is it's been a challenge just getting the information documented. You say yes, you're doing it, and coming up with that. Depends, I imagine, the school and who they have for resource people. One of the questions I was trying to get in before our last presenter walked away, had to leave, was the challenge of the A+ exams. They're kind of priced $225, $300 or something like that. And that's just for the exam one time, and there's 2 of them. I know that people are saying they want that A+ behind their Google IT certificate. That's what the employers are looking for. So I was looking for that answer. The biggest part I really want to talk about is what I would call the sample program model flowchart. You have 4 blocks in there, and I'm just assuming that's just a model that you made up. But for Google IT, if we're just taking students as they come in to the college, and some of them are already taking classes at the college, others are, this is the first class they're taking in IT, college. Couldn't we just basically boil that down into two blocks or 3 blocks, even if you want to put a block in there for adult ed on a college success class? It doesn't have to be 4. Could it be any variations or what? There, that slide.
Yep. Bernie, would you mind repeating that last question again? I apologize. You were coming in and out just a little bit.
Okay. If you look at our Google IT model right now, we would have Google IT support specialist, and that would be the certificate that they would earn. I've been thinking about moving that back one, and the next one would be the A+. But that being so pricey to take that test, and you have to take 2 of them, so I'm guessing they're going to have at least $500 tied up in 2 90-minute tests. Can I make that like an option, the last block, the A+? And that's what I was trying to get a hold of the previous presenter to hear what he had, how he ran into that. I know some businesses don't care whether it has a Google IT certificate with the A+, and some say, boy, if it had the A+, I virtually hired a person on the spot. Follow where I'm going? Going back into...
Completely. And so I'll speak a little bit for Mamadou, but this is a question I can follow up with him on. I think that what we've seen in some cases, that if employers really value that A+ certification, that's something that they're willing to help pay for. And I want to make sure that this is part of the conversation and part of your thinking around program design. Employers should play a role in supporting the educational outcomes of their apprentices. This is not someone that's hired. This is a question of building versus buying talent. And if part of building talent is ensuring that they have the right certifications, then that's something that could also potentially be negotiated with the employer as part of that broader package, is how they help support. So if they see that the A+ certification is something that's really important for them in their business model, it can be customized in a way that they help drive that. So if it is a $500 exam, maybe they pay half of it. Maybe that's something that they help guide other resources towards. I think that's kind of part of the bigger conversation about how you structure those employer relationships so that they get what they need out of the apprenticeship.
Yeah, because they still have that. Some of them have the mentality, we're going to bring them on, educate them, and as they get seniority with the organization, we'll keep sending them to classes and workshops and all that. Then others, they really want to take the person right off the street and start using them because it's an entry-level position. So I'm just looking for some insights. People may have ran into other problems like that how they handled it? Because it has a big impact on how you build this program model, flowchart.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm just going to toggle back to the PowerPoint presentation. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble driving here. I think this is where these pieces of the puzzle, like that bridge and the occupational skills training, become so important. So an employer is interested in having somebody like they can pull them right off the street and bring them in. Well, that person that comes off the street is going to have a certain set of skills, some set of skills, and particularly in IT. And I think this is something that Paul from City Colleges has mentioned before, that there's like this kind of assumption of a baseline set of skills, a baseline set of familiarity with the IT world that is really necessary in order for them to be successful in an IT apprenticeship. And so the things that I think you need to think about from a program design perspective is where in the course of the way that your CAP IT model is built, is where are those kind of core fundamental skills built into the bridge programs or the pre-apprenticeship programs in a way that makes them as apprentices much more successful. So I think that it's not so much, I think, a question around the certifications, but what are the building blocks to that certification? And if a student is prepared to be an employee in that organization, then it's a bigger value add for that company to bring them in as opposed to somebody off the street.
You lost me there. They're bringing them off the street, or they're going to hire them and while they're going to school, getting a Google IT support certificate, and then start that would be sort of like the pre-bridge, and then the bridge, it would be to start them off as an apprentice and grooming them from there, let's say with the A+ certification and getting the networking basic certificate and that CompTIA certificate, so that a couple years later, that's why I was asking them how long the apprenticeship is, because a lot of what I got out of the literature, they like them to have 6 to 9 months of experience before they get into networking basics, and then 2 years, between 1 and 2 years before they get into cybersecurity plus. So that quickly gets past his 2-year apprenticeship.
Yeah, each apprenticeship is guided by different principles and by different timing structures based on what you need. And I think the point I was trying to make is that if an employer is interested in just hiring somebody without having to pay for those certifications, or I'm not entirely sure what you meant by like hiring someone off the street, but I think that part of the role of the CAP IT model is thinking through how do you get students prepared enough in order to get into those apprenticeship programs. So like, what's the bridge? What are the stepping stones to get them there? And what role does the community college play in doing that? So as you think about that program model, right, where are they getting what information and stacked in what order, so that by the time they get to a progression in skill attainment and wages, or option to enter apprenticeship, right, that they're prepared to do that. And I think that's part of the methodology behind this sample program flowchart. Like, what's your plan for students to get from A to B to C to D, and how do they get on and off the train in order to do that?
All right, that helps. It helps a bit.
Good.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Bernie. I'm going to go ahead and mute you and put your hand down. Do I have a volunteer from another college that would like to share on their thoughts and how their process is going? Or I'm happy to call on somebody too. Thank you, Joy. Joy, I'm going to unmute you. It says you need to unmute yourself. Are you working there, Joy? Your audio pin is 115. Joy, are you with us?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can't hear me?
Welcome to the show. Yes, Joy, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I was talking and I wasn't getting any response. So I wanted to address Bernie's question about the exam. We actually, at Red Lake College, we actually build in the price of the Network Plus exams into our course fees and our lab fees, so that when students finish up or they're finishing up their second year, they take the Network Plus exams. They take security and network, I think, both of those. So that's one way that we can ensure that those students are actually meeting competencies and earning those industry recognized credentials. As far as
Thank you.
As far as our tool goes, we are implementing Google IT as a pre-apprenticeship, so it's a kind of a bridge to the apprenticeship program. All of our students that are enrolling in IT, they are given the choice whether or not they want to take the course as a pre-apprenticeship, and then after they complete the course, they have priority in entering into an apprenticeship program. We've also developed a bridge course with adult education to help establish career pathways for entry into a pre-apprenticeship program.
Excellent. And how's the assessment going? Are you feeling that it's helping you kind of synthesize everything?
You're referring to the tool, the Capit tool?
Yes, the Capit tool.
Yes. Yes, we actually, our Capit team met on that this morning, and I feel like we have a good understanding of how we are assessing the program, as well as evaluating the program for needs within our community.
Whitney or Andrea, any questions for Rend Lake?
No, it sounds like you're doing some really great work. I'm really curious to see kind of how your assessment tool fleshes out going forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Joy. Any other questions for us? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Do I have any other great volunteers? Bobby, I'm going to unmute you, and there you go, Bobby.
We're doing something very similar to Rend Lake. What we're trying to work on, because we're a little behind, is sort of the front end, not the apprenticeship part. We're sort of working on that, but I think it's going to take a while for employers to get on board. So what we're doing is we're trying to get ESL and GED bridges in for every single cluster that we have. And so that's what we're doing with this particular grant, is trying to get building the ESL and GED. And for this particular cluster, we're also doing an ICAPS, and those are all in progress. And so they're sort of prior to the visual that you have there on the flow chart of the pre-apprenticeship, because the Google IT is a pre-apprenticeship, but it also is serving as a way to deliver the ESL portion and the ICAPS portion. Does that make sense?
I might need a little help with that, but if you're able to visualize that in your assessment tool, then I'm sure I'll be able to follow.
All righty.
Sorry, I was on mute. Any other comments or questions for Bobby? Thank you for sharing, Bobby. Who else has their hand up and who hasn't gone? Paul, I'm going to unmute you. Paul Thompson, Chicago.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. So I wanted to actually ask a question about the sample program model flowchart. One of the things that I noticed here is, like in the first box on the left, you've listed, some of the content courses and a credit hour total on that. But then, as you move to the right, there are more courses that are included as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm seeing. So and again, I'm just trying to make sure that I understand this. So what this is suggesting then is that you are running this apprenticeship program, and at the same time you have semester coursework that's 12, 15, 16, and 16 hours. And I'm just trying to understand what the thinking is around how you're going to be able to engage in the work component with that many hours.
No, and I think that's a fair question, and that might be an errand explanation on the sample program model flow chart, right? So each of these has to fit in a way that makes sense to both your employers and your community college context, right? So what it is that how it is you're structuring your program. The point here is that there are pieces of related technical instruction, on-the-job training, support courses, exploratory courses, college success courses. All of these things have to somehow fit into the broader education that someone gets as they're in these programs. So for instance, like your technical math could be contextualized technical math that's embedded as part of another course in IT or a prep course for a certification in IT. Like there's ways that you can thread all these things in so that the on-the-job training is part and parcel of the work that they're doing. And I think that's just going to be an important part of the program design model. But this is simply sampling so that you can see kind of how you might structure kind of the enter into pre-apprenticeship, the options to exit, the progression to skill attainment and wages, and then further progression to skill attainment and wages. This is not a prescription.
Got it. Yeah, no, I was just, my experience with, running, coursework and on-the-job training and experience at the same time is that, even if you did a mix of a 12-hour course load, which helps a lot because it gets the students to full-time status, which means like things like transportation, like that unlocks a venture card, which allows students to, use public transportation freely. It also has some implications around available financial aid and that kind of thing. So, but even if you get to a 12-hour course load, you're right around 28, 30 hours of work a week becomes like, the absolute limit of what a student can really reasonably handle, especially if it's like term after term after term. So, okay, so yeah, so I just wanted to understand that. One of the things that we have looked at, and I know you referenced something I said last time we talked, was about prerequisite coursework that was really giving the students the ability to step into a role and contribute, and that if you are framing this as part of a solving a business problem for employers, then that come on have to be able to do something. And so anyway, I'm getting an echo.
I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So anyway, that being said, what we've looked to do is, especially in cybersecurity, which is a little more advanced along the IT continuum in terms of skills and capabilities. What we're looking to do now is we have a structure in our curriculum that is a basic certificate, advanced certificate, and AAS that's just recently been implemented and approved at city colleges, and the basic certificate will be at all 7 colleges. But we really want to look at is leveraging that basic certificate as an integral part of the pre-apprenticeship, as opposed to trying to front-end load it, and then look at the remaining coursework in the AAS to structure into a model like this, for the concurrent on-the-job training portion of the apprenticeship. So I think that's been the shift in our thinking, and we're working to put that together.
So just so I understand, you're thinking about how you might front load kind of some of the core pieces so that by the time they get to their technical courses, there's more opportunity, more space for some of the on-the-job training?
Yeah, but I would say said differently. I mean, that was kind of, we were thinking about front loading specifically within the apprenticeship model, and what we realized is that this is an opportunity to leverage the pre-apprenticeship as a means of kind of moving people, into a position. And it's interesting because when I had conversations with industry folks about, at what point across this curriculum would someone be able to come step into a role and be contributory in an organization, and they agreed, like, oh, if they got through this set of coursework in the basic certificate, we could then, get them immediately doing like some monitoring and that kind of stuff that would help them be productive right away. So we're looking at both a pre-apprenticeship and an apprenticeship, as opposed to a front-loaded apprenticeship only.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really consistent with this model.
Yeah.
So I know we only have a few moments left, and I'm wondering if there are any folks that just want to speak for 30, 40 seconds about some things that have kind of emerged as a result of the assessment tool.
Please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Cindy, you're good to go.
Hi there, everyone. Cindy Burnsich-Drew with Prairie State College. We met as our large group, our team, remotely, of course, to kind of flush through the questions within the tool, and some of the things that we found programmatically, looking at, kind of speaking to what Paul just mentioned, whether we do traditional or front-loaded courses. I think right now, because we do have some challenges with employer engagement, it may benefit us to do the front-loaded versus the traditional. We're actually set up to do the traditional, but we're kind of, again, assessing and evaluating that. And also looking at the flow chart, giving attention to detail with that in terms of how best it's going to support systems moving forward. One of the areas that we're really focusing on as well is the given the employer engagement piece, the business partners area. So these are things that we obviously collectively talked about, and we are continuing to work on outreach efforts with regional employers to engage as business partners.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And I'm curious to dig further into this kind of pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship model and how you front load some of that training. That's great.
Thank you.
So we have about 1 more minute left. Is there anyone else who wants to share some kind of observations or things of interest in relation to the assessment tool?
And again, if you do have questions, go ahead and send those in to either Andrea or I, and we're happy to be of assistance to you even when we're not on the webinar. I do see, Bernie, your hand's up. I don't know if I've unmuted you. Is that a new question, or did I just not get you?
It keeps on jumping up there, so I don't know what's going on. I ran out of questions.
Okay, that's all right. Glad we answered everything for you. Anybody have a last minute question, comment?
Amy, this is Whitney. I don't have a question, but I do want to remind folks that we're doing this for the purpose of not only getting you sort of a structured way to assess your current processes and your program as we think about moving this project forward, but a way to inform us in terms of what you are doing so that we can better connect the dots as we identify any gaps, and we can sort of connect you all to do some peer networking and mentoring if necessary. So that will also help us identify the technical assistance and any upcoming professional development needs. So please work with your grant teams to complete the self-assessment with as much as information as possible. You know, what you put in is what you will get out, and you can get those to us through the CapIT inbox, or you can send them directly to Levon or me. And we're looking for around May 8th, but if you need more time, please just let us know. Otherwise, I know, Amy, we have a few more webinars and other professional development events coming up that you may want to share.
Yes, Andrea, can you click to that last slide on the PowerPoint?
Sure can. Sorry about that. Sorry. I'm committing all of the PowerPoint faux pas. So our next
there we
webinar,
go.
we're scheduled for next Wednesday, April 29th. So we're going to be talking about partnering and recruitment, and we'll have Eric Zelsnow, who runs the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning at JFF. You've heard from him before, and myself will be on that. And if there are particular questions that you would like us to address beforehand, like if there's something that you'd like to make sure that we discuss during that presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You all have my email address. You can reach out to me directly and ask me any targeted questions that we make sure that we pinpoint on that webinar. And then Amy, I'll let you talk about the advisory meeting as well as the next learning session, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, and our next learning community will be on May 13th. Again, at 9 a.m. So the webinar is 10 a.m. next week, then May 13th is at 9 a.m. And then if deemed safe, appropriate, and possible, we will be having a CAPIT advisory meeting in Bloomington on July 15th. So we'd like you to hold that date. And if we're not able to meet in person, we will conduct that virtually. So just hold those dates for us. Again, any questions, send to Andrea. If you want to send them to me or Levon, we all coordinate and talk often. So you can send those that way. And we hope you have a great day. We hope you stay safe. And we hope you found this beneficial and helpful. So any questions you have, just send our way. And we will talk to you all next week. Thank you guys for a great day.
Thank you, everybody.